Hi everyone, this is Peaceful Mind ASMR, and this is going to be a show and tell video of, I recently was looking through some old things and I came across some comic strips that I had made, some as far back as when I was in 7th grade, so that would be about 8 years ago, and then a few as well that I made in high school. I have a lot actually that I'm going to be going through with you today, and I thought that for each comic I would just kind of show it, read the captions, and to the best of my memory explain kind of what I was thinking when I made it, and I guess probably what materials I used to make the comic strip. So yeah, and some of these are very old, like I said. So the first comic strip is this one. It has a teacher here, and he's saying, "Class, have you read The Book Thief?" Or, "You've read The Book Thief, right?" And then in this frame, the character is like on his smartphone, and he's reading like spark notes for The Book Thief, and then he says, "I have now." And I guess the teacher's angry because he figured out that the student just looked up the spark notes for The Book Thief. Some of these comics are going to be very silly. I made them when I was much younger, but yeah. And for this I just used Sharpie and either colored pencil or crayon. I actually can't tell. So that was one of the first comics that I ever made. And some of these probably aren't going to be very funny, just because this one's probably going to be really hard to see. But basically, zoom in, there's all these people waiting in line. You know, people are going through rain. I don't even know what's going on. Snow. Looks like they have to cross a river. Over here, fight off a dragon. Walk up a pyramid. Swing over like a cliff. Eventually to get to this little coffee stand, and the person at the coffee stand says, "Step right up." And then in the last frame, I guess it's a couple, and the wife saying, "Honey, where have you been?" And then the guy, who's all kind of his clothes are in tatters and it looks like he's been through hell, basically, says, "Oh, just getting my cup of coffee for today." I think my thinking behind this comic was that, like, I was still young and I was just starting to drink coffee, but I was perceiving that, like, people, you know, will do anything to get their morning cup of coffee, even so much as fight off dragons and, you know, do all sorts of crazy stuff. I don't know if it works. I made it back then, that's all I know, but yeah. Just a little comic. And for that one, I just used Sharpie. This comic, I used both, I think, Sharpie, and then I used like actual ink and a like paintbrush, and I would dilute the ink and get the different shades and kind of like painted it in a way. But basically, in the first frame, it's like a kitchen, and there's all these bowls of ice cream, and this little container of mint chip ice cream. And then the mom is saying, "Ice cream." And then I guess the children are like, "Oh, we're coming," or whatever, all excited. And then one of the children's like, "Why must you measure?" Because the other kid put their 2 bowls of ice cream on like a scale type thing, balance scale. And then the other kid at the very end says, "Sometimes the fraction of a difference counts." So I think it was just because, like siblings compete a lot, and I guess I was trying to show in this that, the siblings will go so far as to measure or weigh their ice creams to make sure that they're the exact same weight so that no one gets more than the other. Again, I made this a long time ago, so I don't know if it works or not. But I think that was my thinking behind this particular comic. The next comic, this one's really old. I remember making this in like 7th grade, I think. So basically, this comic takes place at a movie theater. And in the first frame, it's kind of showing like a scary movie, like a really scary movie. There's some sort of creature here. It's got a weird arm with an eye on it. There's an eye in the picture. And there's like hand body parts, all with like eyes written on it. And then in the next frame, it shows all the people, again, all the people with bags over their heads, because those were the characters I was drawing at that time. And they're watching the movie, and they're kind of, excuse me, and they're kind of bored with the movie, like someone's texting, someone's saying, "This movie is so lame," and I think this person's saying, "This is so boring." And then, so it's basically being like, everyone's not really scared of the really scary movie. And then in this frame, it shows like a cute teddy bear with a bag over its head, because those are the characters I was drawing. It's supposed to be cute and kind of like a children's movie. And then you can see everyone in the audience watching it. But instead of thinking it's like lame like they did with the scary movie, people are like, "Hey kids, let's leave. Oh my god, this is really scary. And why did I see this?" So I don't really know if that was funny or not. I don't know if it works, but I think my thinking behind making this was like, people aren't really scared of the scary movies. They're more scared of the like stupid cute movie or something. Again, I made this a really long time ago. So yeah, and I just used believe Sharpie and colored pencils. But I don't really think it's that funny now, but whatever. I haven't looked at some of these, since I made them a long time ago. Okay, this one. In the first frame, it says, "Son, did you finish your chores?" And then this guy's thinking about how he finished his chores. And next frame, it shows him handing the chore list to his little brother. And then it shows in the next frame his brother mowing the lawn. Then his brother, I guess, chopping the wood, because I guess that was a chore. And then in this frame, the other son's like, "Yes, Dad, of course." And then the last frame says, "Little brothers were put on this earth for one reason, to do the work and chores of their elders." I don't really know why I created this, because I don't have younger siblings. I only have an older sibling. So, part of the fun is reacting to these old comics. Again, I don't really know if it was funny or not, but yeah, so that's an old one that I made, and I just used colored pencil and Sharpie, I think. Okay, here's another old one. So it shows like a bird with a bag over its head, because again, those are the characters that I was drawing. He's flying, and then he comes across a house, and he sees through the window, like, I guess a painting of some grapes, and he's like, "Cool, a giant grape." But then it turns out, and it says at the top, 5 seconds later, the bird smashed into the glass because he thought he was flying towards some giant grapes, and he hit the glass. And then it shows in this frame the bird, who's, I guess, dead, on the window, and the gentleman here says, "I sure am glad that I stopped using that old glass cleaner. This new stuff makes the glass look invisible." So, some of these are really bad. Oh my gosh. But, yeah, so that was that comic. I don't know what I was thinking. Let me see. Okay. So after I was drawing comics with the characters with the bags over their heads for a long time, I switched to making comics about this boy named Liam, who has curly hair and glasses. And I think when I started making the comics about Liam, I was maybe a freshman in high school, I think. But anyway. So, let's see if I can get it. Okay. So, in the first frame, it shows all these kids on a school bus. And then the next frame, it says there's a teacher in a classroom, and he's saying, "Welcome back to high school. Here are your textbooks." And then I show all these textbooks being dropped into someone's backpack, or Liam's backpack. And then it shows Liam, I guess, in pain because his backpack hurts so much. And here he is again right here. And he's like, oh, like, because the backpack's so heavy from all the textbooks. And then in this frame, just shows Liam getting off a bus. And then his mom asks, so did you learn anything today at school? And then the last frame is, yeah, I should have lifted weights this summer. So, I think my thinking behind that was that, because, like, in high school you get all these textbooks and they're all really big and really heavy, and so, I was just trying to make the point that, Liam's like, I should have lifted weights so that he could have been strong enough to carry all the textbooks for the school year. I don't know if it's funny. It's a long time ago, but yeah, so there's that comic. Then there's this comic, another one about Liam. So in the first frame, it shows Liam looking out a window, and it's snowing outside. He can see into his backyard. And then he says, yay, the first snowfall. And then in this frame, it shows Liam kind of trying to get outside, and his mom's like, where do you think you're going? And she's like, make sure that you have your gloves, scarf, jacket, hat, snow boots, snowshoes, sweater, hand warmers. And, I guess she continues on with all these things he has to wear before he can go out. And so I show him putting on everything, like his gloves, his scarf, his hat, and his jacket. And then by the time he has all his clothes on to go outside, it's sunny outside, and he's saying, I missed winter. So my thinking behind that was that it took him so long to put on everything that his mom said he had to wear before he could go outside that winter passed and then spring came. So that was the joke there, I think. I don't know. These are very silly. So this one. Let's start with the first frame. So it shows, Liam's in the car with his mom, and his mom's saying, I love driving by all these old houses, because in some parts of the United States, there's some homes that were built, in the 1600s, 1700s, and they're still standing. And so sometimes you'll see on houses like a date, and it tells you like when the house was built, if you didn't know that. So in the second frame, you can see their car, and they're driving by a house that was built in 1876. And Mom's saying, see, that house was built in 1786. And then they're driving by a house, and the mom says, and this one is from 1652? It's hard to read, sorry. And then they're in shock because they're both staring. And then there's this house, and it says 500 BC, and it's like a caveman house. So I think my thinking behind that was just that, there's all these old homes in New England or wherever, and they're, some of them are from the 1800s, 1700s, or 1600s, and then they come across this one that's from 500 BC, which obviously isn't possible, but it's the joke, I guess. Again, I don't really know. Why did that? Okay. So this one is another one. And in the first frame, it shows Liam, like he's asleep, he's fallen asleep at his book. Maybe he was listening to ASMR, I don't know. But he's fallen asleep and he's dreaming. And in the dream, it shows him as a superhero. And then it shows him, he's just rescued some girl or something from danger. And then his alarm goes off. And he, is looking at his muscles, although I didn't draw his arm very well. Looks like a noodle. But he's looking at his non-existent muscle on his arm, I guess. And then in the last frame, he's saying, reality stinks. But as an added bonus, his reflection in the pond that he's looking at himself in, his reflection is of him as the superhero. I think at the time I thought that would be a nice touch. But again, these are really silly. I'm not sure when I made that one either. So here's another one. And in the first frame, it shows him sleeping at his bed. And he pulls off the calendar. Although, you know what I drew? I drew him ripping off that it was April 1st, but it's supposed to be April 1st, like April Fool's Day. So I should have been ripping off, not the 1st of April. So that was a mistake, but whatever. Then he says, oh no, it's April Fool's Day. And then he's walking on a street and he says, so far, so good. But you can see someone's leg and laughing. And they had left like a hole or something in the sidewalk. I don't really know. And you see him walking into the hole on the sidewalk. And he's like, help, because he's falling in. Then he lands in the comic. And it turns out that he's gone into a different comic universe, and he's in the Peanuts comic. And it's as if he's Charlie Brown, I guess, and he says, oh, good grief. There's Snoopy in the background and Lucy. So I was trying to make a crossover with the other comic strip, Peanuts, I guess. It's a very silly comic strip. Yeah. I don't know. I think this is one I drew for the holidays. there's no speaking, but basically, it's at like a Christmas tree farm, where you can cut down your own Christmas tree. And then it shows Liam standing next to a tree, but the tree, all the leaves are very curly, like his hair. And then there's this really tall and skinny guy standing next to a really tall and skinny Christmas tree. And then there's sort of a rounder person standing next to a really round Christmas tree. So I think my thinking behind that was that, like, the joke is that, you know, people were picking the trees that kind of resemble a quality about themselves that's similar or the same. Again, I don't know if it works or not, or if it's funny, but yeah. And the last comic that I'm going to be showing is this one. It's another Liam comic. So in the first frame, it shows Liam, I guess, opening up some bubble gum, and he blows a bubble, and he flies away with his bubble. But then he flies into something sharp on the wall, and his bubble pops, and it gets all over him. And then he just blows another bubble and flies away as if nothing happened. I'll show it. So I think the purpose of that was, it wasn't really supposed to be funny. It was just supposed to be like one of those comics where just something happens. Like he popped the bubble and he, you know, it was all over him. He's just like being, not really showing any emotions, and then he just flies away as if nothing had happened. I don't really know. Again, it's a very silly comic. And I don't know if it's funny. But, so that is all I'm going to be showing in this video. I didn't show all of them. I actually had I probably have twice as many comics as I showed in this video, but I thought for the sake of time I wouldn't show all of them. But a lot of them are very old, and I haven't looked at them in many years, so it was really fun to go through them and look at them again, and see how much I failed at trying to make jokes and make funny comic strips. But you know, in 7th grade when I started making comics, I hadn't ever really done much drawing, and so I wanted to learn how to draw better. So that's kind of why I started making comics. And I don't make comics so much anymore, comic strips, but I'm still continuing to practice drawing and stuff. But anyway, I hope that this was somewhat entertaining to see some of my old comics, which are not very funny, but whatever. And I hope you're all doing very well. And as always, I hope that you have a very, very peaceful mind.